first. I think I would like to sit down with staff and whatever consultant at that time and make the decision on what areas we do start first. There is going to be brought to the committee in the next 2 weeks an additional study, which is a separate area of town, which is the area right south of the treatment plant, which we feel right now may be in need of a little inspection prior to when this project is slated to begin.
Anything else on 5? Alderman Eugene Wesley.
Page 43, inspect and paint reserve tanks. Is that for the treatment plant, John? 3, 4, and 5?
No, Res 3, 4, and 5 are down on Potter's.
Thank you.
Park Lane.
Alderman Shockey.
I see a number of the projects are depending on the plant alternative that will be choosing for the treatment plant, so the projects may not be needed. I'm just wondering why on page 47, the upgrade booster wouldn't be part of the new treatment plant that we're talking about.
Page 47 is the booster station for our water system. So that goes equidistant between the north side of town, which helps our split between the 2 water towers. So that has nothing to do with the treatment plant. In essence, that's our drinking water, potable drinking water. That's just a booster station to keep pressure to the north side of town.
Good enough, thank you.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Okay, we've been through this whole book almost. It's 10 o'clock. I see nothing on chapter 5 about the sewage on Forest View. Does it fall under this? Where does it fall under?
The sewage on Forest View would fall into the citywide I&I study first and paramount, and then the I guess stormwater issue with that would fall under that unfunded projects at the end of.
Don't, another unfunded. Okay, I'll wait to chapter 6.
However, the INI covers the determination of what the problem is. Is that correct?
The I&I study, correct, would identify the sanitary excursions that happen on Forest View when that system's surcharged. That would involve tightening up ultimately the point sources that not only go into that sanitary line, but again, once that sanitary line has been breached due to stormwater flooding, either via the road or via the other residences in that area, there's ultimately going to be no way to stop that line from surcharging at that point, if the water gets that high.
And that would happen first. That part of the INI would happen this coming fiscal year to figure out what it is. Is that right? Like we'll put that early on first, or?
As I stated before, in the next 2 weeks, I have a separate I&I study for
Oh,
the
no, I
Forest
didn't
View
pick up on that.
area
Okay.
coming to the committee to look at that first. So that'll be something done prior to this citywide I&I study.
Okay, in this current budget year.
Correct.
Okay, so Alderman Roy Wesley, that's, that part's gonna happen, the determination.
I hope sooner than later.
Yeah. Okay, anything else on 5? Okay. Section 6. Oh, no comments? Okay.
Nope. Oh, no.
Okay, is there any comments on section 6? Yes, I do. Okay,
Oh, what section was that under? Do you remember?
section 4.
41.
Page for section 4. Okay, 45. Okay, page 41.
That will be section 5, Madam Chairman. Oh, section 4, you're right.
I did a very quick and dirty estimate just based on the prices we got for this last bid to do and right now we're doing Irving Park, to Oak Hill. So to do the last two sections, which would be Oak Hill to Montrose and Lorena to Foster, I would estimate $330,000.
So outside of this current fiscal year,
Right, what we're doing now will be paid for what's in this fiscal year, and that'll take care of that. So then there would be an additional $330,000 required to get it to Montrose on the south and to Foster on the north.
Alderman Eugene Wesley?
That's lights, everything?
No, only the,
Just the engineering?
Well, about $330,000 for the construction of the lights. If we maybe wanted to add another 10% for engineering, I don't know how much engineering is going to be involved, but just to be safe, add another 30,000 for that,
so like 360.
360 roughly.
I'm a little uncomfortable with 360 right off the bat. I could see splitting that in half, doing 180 in 11 and 180,000 in 12.
Okay. And we have some money left over. Did we move it up like we had kicked around this current fiscal year? Did we add anything in?
No.
Okay. So there's money there that's going to carry over that was allocated.
Yeah, if you want to do it over 3 years, 120,000 a year. If you want to do it over 2 years, 180,000 a year.
Want to do the 180?
I mean, you
Yeah.
can do it all in 1 year if you want to. That gets me a little bit nervous in terms of that kind of an allocation in 1 year. I'd prefer personally to spread it out over 2 or 3 years.
Okay. Alderman Shockey?
I agree. I agree with the 2 years. Is it approximately half from what we're doing now to Montrose?
No, actually, the distance to Montrose is more than twice what we're doing now.
To Montrose is about twice?
Yeah, we're going about a third of the way down to Montrose now, so we're
Well,
about 2/3.
what I'm thinking
of the way
about,
down.
after we're done with what we have contracted for now, the difference between that and Montrose and the difference between the north side, are they about equal?
No, again, the south side part is almost twice as much as the north side part.
As I was thinking, if it's probably a good idea to split it up. I'd like to see one side finished, finish the south side in 1 year, and then do the additional north side the following year.
Then that would be about $240,000 next year and $120,000 in 2012.
That's the one-
I'm okay with that.
That would be my motion, if the seconder agrees.
Does the seconder agree? Okay, we have a motion, a second on the question. Alderman Police.
If we needed to make up some of that money, again, we got that wall over there at Irving Park. If we wanted to push that off a year, that was 68,000. And then the $50,000 budget for streetscape, we've got a couple of things. The directional signs was the one that was coming up this year. Actually, Jeff has found somebody that may do the project at a better price than what we were getting. So there might be some extra money in that tourism fund if we want to use some of that money instead of just pulling it all out one shot out of the general fund or capital projects. We can
I just
discuss
think,
that budget.
You know, these lights started probably 10 years ago when I was chairman of the Streetscape Committee, and I'd just like to see it finished because we've bypassed a number of years and so forth. Just get that Wooddale thing done, and I think in 2 years would be appropriate.
Okay, any other, there's a motion, a second, and Alderman Thornton.
Thank you, Chairwoman. This is just a kind of a mathematical question. When you talk about something spreading out over 3 years, and you talk about a figure of 360,000 to do it at once, and if it's spread out over 3 years, it's 120,000. That's 120 times 3 is 360. Why is it in this equation there's never, or there isn't in this one, a concept of inflation for spreading it out? And why isn't there a concept of discount for doing it at once? Won't the vendor provide the lamps at a lower price if you buy more? Just two questions. Who wants to answer them?
In terms of the inflation part of it, I just kind of did this really fast, so I made it as simple as possible. And you know what? Maybe the economies of scale of doing more will equal the inflation and they'll cancel each other out. You're not going to get a huge discount buying more lights. They think they usually just have a set price for the light themselves that the contractor has to buy. You'll get a discount on all the conduit and whatnot that goes with it. There, the more you do, the cheaper it is. But that's only a portion of the contract. So yeah, I mean, if in terms of, if you're concerned about inflation, I mean, we can always put a contingency on there and make it higher. The one we're only talking about next year, and the other one 2 years out, so we're not talking about real long time periods. I guess that would be my best answer to it.
Okay, there's a motion, a second. I'm going to call it. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is item number 6. Anything on 6? Alderman Roy Wesley.
I find it very offensive here. And, you know, this is a time to play politics, I guess. I see Forest View, Oakwood, Harvey, Edgebrook, reconstruction, South Cedar Avenue drainage improvements. I take it, Wally, that you are gonna try your best to make sure that gets in the budget. Or is this how it stands?
It's not my call. It's a policy call that the council makes. And if the council wants to include any or all of these projects in the budget, there is about enough. Well, let's just take, let's go back to page 7. And if you look at the last line, ending cash balance, at the end of 2015, we project that there's still $4.4 million that's not spoken for, that's free cash. So if you want to do these projects, one or more of them, there's enough money in the budget to do it. The reason I didn't recommend these for funding were with respect to North Cedar, South Cedar, and Windsor Catalpa. I didn't think that the benefit outweighed the cost. And given the fact that I had recommended not to fund those, I didn't want to start playing God, if you will, and say, well, you know, we ought to do Forest View Harvey. I punted that, and I left it up to you all to see if you thought that that was important enough to put back in. I think Forest View Harvey has a better and a higher cost-benefit analysis or cost-to-benefit ratio than the other ones do. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to spend $80,000 on North Cedar to solve the problem that 2 people have in their backyards. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to spend $200,000 plus in the Windsor Catalpa area when all we've seen really is localized flooding on the streets that goes away after a couple hours. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to spend $500,000 on South Cedar and have to acquire property for a detention pond that has an impact on a minimal number of people. I think if you're going to spend money on any of the 4, it's probably better spent on Forest View and Harvey.
That's
But
fine.
I didn't want to make that call on my own. I wanted to leave them all unfunded and pass the buck back to you all and let you decide. Pardon my candor, but, you know, that was my
okay.
thought process.
Pass the buck, that's fine.
Out of the four projects here, did you? were you
No,
still-
go ahead, and then I'll go back to
Sorry.
Roy. Don't worry.
Out of the 4 projects here, North Cedar, South Cedar, and the Windsor Catalpa, you know, Wally talks about the cost benefit, and I think we're gonna need to discuss this, hopefully not tonight, but in the very near future, as to how we're gonna, what we're gonna be able to come up with as a council to try to help these people. Can we follow these recommendations? Can we spend this money? Is there something else we can do? I'm not gonna get into it right now, I really don't want to. But these are 3 projects that I don't think we knew existed 3 years ago. And what Wally's saying is maybe they're not going to exist in the future. And I hope I don't have to believe that because I want to do something, but I don't know what the solution is right now. But Harvey, Forest View, Oakwood, and Edgebrook we're talking about street reconstructions. Street reconstructions happen to every street every 20 or 25 years. These were supposed to be at some point in the future rebuilt. And since I've been on the council, I've been arguing that when they get rebuilt in such a way that they, at the very least, don't make the problems of flooding and drainage worse than they need to be, which I believe truly happened back in the late 80s and early 90s, the last time these streets were done. You know, and I'm also asking that, what can we do to make the problem better? So I think the issue of not doing curbs and gutters and sidewalks, leaving open swales for you know, more capacity for holding that stormwater are critical elements to rebuilding the street properly, these 4 streets properly. They might even prove, as Dave Graff's preliminary budget here shows, that it might make the reconstruction of these 4 streets cheaper than the reconstruction of pretty much any other 4 streets in town. At the same time, we help those residents out. So I guess the point is that these are streets that have to get reconstructed anyway, so I hope that when we get to the point where we decide what, if anything, on this unfunded list gets funded and scheduled, that's the first area that we get real serious about making sure ends up in the CIP, which was why I was agreeing with Alderman Eugene Wesley and Alderman Police earlier, when they suggested that maybe we try to double up some streets for a period of time. Because like I said, I wanted to try to open up a time in space and a space of budget to make this happen. So once again, I think this was a project, or these are 4 projects that are going to happen eventually. We've just been arguing, and now since you've been on the council, Roy, you've assisted the argument that they be built properly, considering the site conditions. So when we get around, if it's not this evening, or if it is this evening, when we get around to discussing the fate of these projects, I really hope this council would seriously consider plugging these streets in somewhere. Thank you.
Alderman Shahi.
On page 54, we have Edgebrook Street water main replacement. Talking about cost-benefit ratios, wouldn't it make sense to do that at the same time we did the street?
Definitely, we would want to make a decision when we're going to do the Forest View, Edgebrook, Oakwood, and Harvey, and then we would adjust that water main, the Edgebrook water main, and I believe there's another one. Yeah, Oakwood also. We would adjust those to match the same time that the street was being done. We wouldn't go through there twice. And I would find out the water main on those other 2 streets when those were done and see if that needed to be done in the near future, and we would roll that in as well.
Then would it make sense to use some of that excess money to do 2 of the streets and the pickup on Edgebrook in 2012 and Oakbrook on 2013? I'm not sure, just Harvey and the other one. This budget, and then 2012 and 2013, when the water mains are scheduled to be replaced anyway. Would there be a cost benefit to that?
My preference would be to do all 4 streets at once, and I think there would be the cost savings and economy of scale in doing that. And also, I like the idea of keeping those streets all on the same maintenance schedule in the future. But that's just my personal preference. You certainly could break them up any way you wanted to. You could do half one year, half another year, or you could do one each year if you wanted to. I mean, nothing, from an engineering standpoint, nothing would prevent that.
So we need an additional 900,000 for those two water replacements this year, along with the money, excess money we have to do all 4 streets. Then we'd have to think about the other 2, the Harvey and what's the other street again? Forest View, how much that water thing would cost. Do we have enough to do that?
Well, I don't think we could do anything in this upcoming year, because I think it would take a number of months to get the engineering done on those. So I think the earliest we could do that would be, fiscal year 012, calendar year 2011.
And as Alderman Cadala was saying, they don't want curbs there. Just some kind of concrete along the edge to hold the asphalt in place so it doesn't crack off on the edges you were talking about, I think.
Tyler?
At one point, a discussion at the council, and I believe it was Alderman Coles that had said, one of the importance of a concrete curb is to help hold the road together. So when vehicles run close to the edge, you don't roll the blacktop over into the soil and start to crack it. And I suggested that if engineering agreed with that, and I think that that's not a bad idea, but if they agreed with it, and that was something that we had to do, I had seen non-barrier type, non-gutter type curbs in the past where it's basically concrete poured relatively flush with the blacktop, so that it doesn't hold water back. The water will still drain off the street into the swales, but it might work as a structural element to help hold the edges of that blacktop from rolling in. Do you have 2 experts in front of us if that's something that's commonly done and if it even makes sense in this case?
Well, we do have an engineering firm working on these very questions right now, and I'm expecting a report back from them in February, and we'll give a presentation to council. And part of what they're being tasked to do is look at different typical sections out there. So we will go ahead and present that, and whether we have concrete curb or shoulder or whatever, they can present those alternatives, and we can go over that. And that's, probably the next step here is to get that report back and get some more information on it.
I want to, Alderman Roy Wesley, do you wish to comment further? Okay. Alderman Police.
Basically, on these unfunded projects, I mean, we don't want to get in the great debate on which one should be done first. I agree, these streets, I'm all for trying to combine streets and get a better price and get them going. The other thing was, we had some other residents in before, we had the street sufficiency study. I'm just curious where these streets, I don't have it in front of me, where these streets fell. Were these in the next few years, or were these streets due in 10 years from now? I'm not, I know there's a problem there, and we need to fix some of these problems.
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated.
Joe.
The short answer is they were several years out. However, we averaged them all together, and I know at least one of them ranked, not so good on the lower end. But having said that, we also did some patching out there last year. But also, the last couple of winters have been especially hard on these streets since we did the street sufficiency study. So the original answer is they were several years out, but it's certainly appropriate to reevaluate them at this point and move them up as needed. I mean, they need work.
All the
They need a
streets have been
long-term
taking a
solution.
beating because of the last 2 years. And like you just said, again, here's another street that we're doing some patching, like on Deer Path a couple of years ago, that are coming up on the street on our study. So we seem to be throwing, whether it be 100,000, 200,000 on some of these patch jobs.
Well, these weren't earmarked for anything, though. I mean, we still don't have a year for these yet. So we
Right,
we
no, but-
had no idea when these were going to be done, and I mean, they were in major need of work, so I mean, I think it was appropriate to do that. It's kind of, I mean, it's.
Right,
risk you take
they were in
running
bad
this.
shape and, right, you couldn't leave them all potholes and whatnot, I understand. But this is where we need to step up if we're gonna try and get ahead on these streets so we don't have these problems. And if we can save the money, we should do a couple at a time each year, if we can afford it.
Alderman Lewitton.
Dave, is there any synergy with the jug handle that will come into Edgewood being combined with work on Edgewood?
To my knowledge, none of the work in that study involves work at Edgebrook. I don't know if anyone else knows. Yeah, nothing on the south side of Irving Park.
Okay, so unless Alderman Eugene Wesley has a comment, because I see you getting out the plans, then I'm gonna let Roy say his comment, because I don't think, it doesn't look like there's any other comments on these unfunded. I'm not seeing any conversation, so Alderman Roy Wesley? Okay. So then after section 6 closes, then you'll make a comment? Okay. Anything else on section 6? Alderman Eugene Wesley.
I will tell you, I did pop out the street study that roads projects are supposed to be done. And Forest View and Harvey is not even, hate to say it's not even listed to after 2017. So unless there's a newer map that I don't
No,
have.
we had never programmed those streets in.
Okay, so it's after 2017, so
Okay,
we could
and
go back and relook at that if the council choose to.
I will recognize you, Alderman Cadella, but question, when, do we already have the study back? Or is it coming back soon on the 4 streets and the drainage and all that?
The study they're doing now, we're looking at a February date for that report.
So then we'll know exactly what they're recommending.
Correct. And we'll know how much of the mix is drainage work and how much of it is street work.
Okay, I think it's important to see that, you know, and then evaluate the whole project. Alderman Cadella.
In response to Alderman Wesley pulling the street sufficiency study out, and he's right, these 4 streets weren't on that study to be done anytime before 2017. But in a testament to what a pile of junk this thing was, 2 years after this was done, when they said Forest View and Harvey didn't need to be reconstructed prior to 2017, both of those streets got almost completely resurfaced because they were in such bad shape. Somebody in this room needs to answer how the heck something like that can happen. And it's nobody in this room's fault necessarily, but my point is I think this is garbage, and I think we should stop looking at it because it didn't do us a darn bit of good.
There were certain streets, and we've talked about them, that they go through an especially tough winter, and they look much worse than they did the year before. And from what I saw, this, and I'm being very honest about this, the street sufficiency study did a good job of surface evaluation. It did not do a perfect job. There were certainly areas that it missed, but overall, it was very good. But you go a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, you're going to find some of them have deteriorated at a much quicker rate than others. And, you know, we should talk about at what kind of intervals we want to do these street sufficiency studies. Because obviously, you do one, it doesn't last forever. Some years go by, you have to do another one. I think some of the streets here definitely came out much worse. 2 years ago, we did some patching on Montrose because there were some areas where that street just, again, took a beating over an especially hard winter, and it needed some work done, and it wasn't programmed in anywhere in our CIP, and we just did some extra patching to it. So, those things happen.
Well, I guess I'm just trying to say that if between 2007, when the study was done, and 2009, when these streets were ground and resurfaced, if in a 2-year interval they they blew the boat so much. How often do we have to do this? Every year? Maybe on some streets, the sufficiency study was more accurate, and on others, it was way off. But, you know, and maybe that has something to do with poor construction means and methods and quality 20 years ago when the roads were built and they fell apart sooner. Or maybe the roads around the creek have a different soil condition and more surface runoff and don't apply to this study. There's got to be some reason that these streets didn't follow suit with the study. And if what you're saying is right, Dave, and I have no reason to believe that you're not correct, if this worked for many other parts of the city, something different is going on here and needs to be addressed. And I can't stand by the efficiency study as a reason to not consider getting these streets done in the very near future.
Well, one thing I will mention, one thing that did happen out on these streets is they were underwater several times in the time period between when that streets efficiency study was done until now. And, you know, being underwater for extended periods of time obviously is going to deteriorate the base of that road quicker.
And is it possible that the study actually looks at the depth of the road and not just what's on top?
No, the one we
And-
had, this last one we had done was only looking at surface distress. So it could drive down a road that maybe was recently done and it comes out in good condition, but it has a weak base underneath it, and yeah, it could fall apart soon after they did that.
Okay,
It was only, yeah, we did no subsurface testing with that particular study.
okay, so that is probably something that Public Works should look at and say, should we do a better study, a new study, a little more in-depth to really understand where the roads are at. So with that being said, and then we have the study to come back in February? Okay. And is there anything else on section 6? Mr. Graff?
Thing, besides the Forest View, Oakwood, Harvey, and Edgebrook, those other three unfunded projects that we had the study for, now North Cedar and Windsor Catalpa, I did include the study in your packets. That's very straightforward, not to say easy to fix, but very straightforward in terms of what the problem is. So I didn't know if you wanted that engineer to come into a February committee meeting and go over all of it in depth. The South Cedar one is much more complicated, and again, I was thinking we would have the engineer who did that come in to, you know, finalize his report and come into a February committee and give a presentation. So I asking, is that still something we want to do?
I would think so. Public Works Committee, do
Sure, no
you
problem.
want that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, if you can work that out, that would be good. Thank you. Okay, I think that's it for section 6. Okay, so the final summary comment from Alderman Roy Wesley.
Okay, we're at 3 hours, right? What time is it, 10:30? Yep. We go through millions of dollars here, and we had 1 week to look at this book. 1 week. I think it's important that we're looking at millions of dollars, that we have a little more time to look at this book instead of 1 week.
Okay.
I don't know what's the percentage of the CIP plan budget. What's the percentage of our budget for that? 40%, 50?
No. We've got it. It's probably 20% of the max.
Okay, but I still think it's important that we get this more than a week. That's it.
We can certainly do that next year.
Okay, like, what do you think, a couple weeks ahead of
A
time?
couple weeks, because there's a lot of information in here, and there's millions of dollars that we're looking at. I mean, there's problems that we could have solved just talking to the manager about unfunded projects that John or me could have went to Wally and say, well, what is this? And we would have had time to talk to the manager about it. But we have a week to go through 50 pages 60 pages. Okay, 65.
Okay, well,
So-
we can strive to, you know, get it a little ahead of time next year. Okay, Alderman, please.
The bottom line is, even if we pass the CIP tonight, when we do the budget in the next couple months, if we find money that we're short, we're gonna start cutting some things out. Correct? If for some reason we're too tight somewhere else, we got all kinds of things going on that hasn't even been mentioned yet.
I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's a policy call.
Okay, anything else on this, Alderman Shackey?
I agree with Alderman Wesley. I'd like to see us table this till February, one of the Tuesday committee meetings in February, to make a final call on it. I don't want to vote on it tonight. I've learned a lot tonight about it and need to think about it a little bit more to make rational decisions. So that's my, I'll make a motion to table until, what, the second or fourth week of next month.
Second.
Before you vote on that.
Yes.
I just a matter of timing, I think it probably would be appropriate that we bring in the consultants for the 4 unfunded projects and tie that into the final discussion on the CIP, and we finish it all off at the same meeting so that everything sort of dovetails. So I would shoot for either the 11th of February or the 25th of February, depending upon when we can get that consultant report back and to you all. That'll give you some time. I know there have been 2 aldermen tonight that have said that they wanted some more time to think about this and ask some questions. That'll give us some time to get those questions answered. And then we can tie up the loose ends in the middle to late February, tie up the CIP. And again, the CIP is a planning document. The only thing that's going to come out of this when you approve it is for us to put these 2011 projects into the budget. And you'll have another crack at the apple at that stage of the game. So we've got time. That's not a problem, Alderman Chalky. If we want to hold that off until middle to late February, that's not a problem at all. We can handle that real easily.
So does the motioner and the second agree to the time frame? And, you know, when we come back to it, I'm not gonna go section by section. Just come prepared with your items, and I'm gonna go down the row of each alderman and say, what are your issues, you know? None of the sections page by page. I understand Alderman Please has an informational question, not a debating question. Alderman Please?
So if we table this, are we telling staff, including Dave there, don't engineer the Elmhurst Street? Is that what we're telling them by tabling this now? Or is he still going forward with his work, his preliminary work?
Because
Hang on a second. I would say it's just, those motions we made are in place. Is that correct? Is that your interpretation too, Mr. Douthwaite?
If we hire a consulting engineer to engineer Deer Path, that's going to have to come back to the council anyway for a decision. So we can start the process of selecting a consultant engineer.
My question is, if we don't do this, does Dave stop with the process of Elmhurst? Because, you know, there was some concern that School Street started so late last year because we put it out to bid. Are we going to start pushing Elmhurst Street? Forget about Deer Path. I'm just talking about the work that Dave's doing. It's in this budget. Is Elmhurst Street going to push back and it's going to go out to bid in July, August? I just, you know.
I mean, Elmhurst Street wasn't discussed a whole lot tonight in terms of whether we do it or whether we don't. It was pretty much assumed.
Right, but if we
That
table this, that's why I'm asking.
We'll keep moving along with it, and we're going to assume that it's going to be a funded project because there was no discussion on not to fund it.
Okay, I just, I
We'll
just want,
keep- it's gonna be
because I don't
designed
want
at-
to, I don't want to come back in May when we're done with the budget and all of a sudden, hey, you guys tabled the CIP and we stopped and now we can't go out to bid.
Well, we're going to keep moving along on that.
I-
I'm going to assume
I
that
don't mind
Elmhurst isn't
tabling,
an
waiting
issue.
for the
I mean, there are
consult.
only a few issues on the cusp,
Okay,
and this isn't one of them. So we're going to assume that
all right.
unless you guys
Yeah, no, no.
have a wild change of opinion, that
I-
we're going to move ahead.
My whole thing was I didn't want to hear in May, hey, you guys tabled it. So we stopped.
We would never do that.
Okay.
Okay, Alderman Eugene Wesley, do you have something to say?
Is there a way you could bring that to council this coming up Thursday for approval for engineering for Deer Path? We already passed a motion to take $100,000 out of this year's budget. I believe 2010, am I right?
Yes.
So why could we not approve that this coming up Thursday and not take it back to committee?
You can do that. That's fine.
All right, so could you see that?
Sure. All you need is just a motion. We'll put it on the agenda as a report out of the committee, recommendation that we go ahead with consultant selection for Deer
Okay,
Path and
thanks.
move it along.
Yeah, that's my concern too.
Make a note to tell Mimi that tomorrow. We'll put it on the agenda for next week. No problem.
Alderman Coles.
He was gonna look, though, see if he had a report on it done in
Yes.
2006 or 2007. On Deer Path. You said you were gonna look.
We'll go ahead with.
Oh, go ahead with
Finding a
the
consultant, and at the same
consult-
time, we'll look for any plans that we
Yeah.
have. We won't actually award a contract till
Yeah.
we've settled that issue.
Yeah, all right, okay.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to table. It's non-debatable, so, all in favor? Any opposed? I oppose. There's 2 opposed, motion carries. That concludes, the CIP discussion. And are there, any items for future meetings? I'm searching for that agenda. There's probably a few listed. Thank you. Item A is Channel 6, Policies and Procedures. Any other, Alderman Police?
I've got one. Because of what's going on with the DuPage Water Commission and shortfalls and all that, they're talking about increases. We should discuss, I know we have a rate increase coming up in May. I want to know what those rate increases are going to be if we know from the DuPage Water Commission, and we might not be able to, we might not want to make both our increase and their increase and just destroy the people.
We haven't heard anything specific from the Water Commission yet. I got an email from the director a couple weeks ago, basically saying everything's up in limbo. There could be increases, but he hasn't committed yet to whether there will be, and if so, how much. We're still waiting to hear.
And that's along the lines of Alderman Roy Wesley. He expressed similar sentiment of just wanting to know where the status of the DuPage Water Commission. So when did we say they're meeting next week? The Water Commission?
I can check. I don't know when they're meeting next.
Okay, so will we have someone from the city attend, probably Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
And then come back with a report on what the
Yep.
issues are? So if we can have that as an item to be considered at future
As
meetings.
soon as we hear, we'll put it on the agenda.
Okay. Is there anything further, Alderman Police or Alderman Ray Wesley on that? Okay. Any other items for future meetings? I make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Call the Public Works Committee order, let the minute taker know that the same people are still present. Need a motion to approve the minutes, December 10th, 2009. That is my motion. Questions? All in favor? Aye, motion carries. Item number 4, report and recommendation to pay request number 1, partial payment for R Commenced Construction LLC in amount of $42,768.00. This was for the pump that was installed by the treatment plant. That will be my motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Questions? Oh, I forgot it. All right, passes. I don't even know. Too late. Report and recommendation, payment number 4, final payment to R. Dunneman Corporation, amount of $91,399.91. This is from the 2009 street improvements. That is my motion.
Question.
Question. Alderman Roy Wesley.
This is Royal Oaks, correct, Dave?
This includes the Royal Oaks work and all the other streets that were resurfaced.
And the
this
warranty
summer.
is for 2 years on those addresses that are in our packet?
Correct.
I have a question for Alderman Coes and Alderman Police. Are you happy with those streets and how they are with the warranty?
Yeah. Can I answer him?
Yeah, go ahead.
If the, the warranty goes to 2013, that's what it said on the end.
Just for those addresses?
That's for the addresses that have the, and right now, there's no complaints of anybody complaining to me. Maybe, I don't know, they might be complaining to Monzio, but there's nobody's complaining, and they said that as long as they're gonna take care of them, everything will be fine.
Okay, none to you?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything but compliments on those streets. My question is, we have this in writing, I take it? This is it? This is the letter that's,
Yeah, I
Is that our
included, I
written-
included that in the packet.
okay.
Okay,
All right.
I'm not trying to interfere with your
No, no, no,
area, but I would just want to make sure that is taken care of.
Mr. Nuzio, was that your question on the letter? Did you have your hands up?
Right, I want to know if that was our
Because
written
it's
guarantee.
been answered. All right, there's a motion, there's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Items to consider future meeting, brush pickup, sanitation sewer overflow, installation of streetlights. Any other items?
Now, one more item about leaves that was left off of this.
Leaves,
Yeah, leaf pickup from curbside.
okay? Are you talking about the city picking up the leaves, or?
Yeah,
I thought we had that discussion that equipment was very costly to do that.
well, we talked about it. We didn't say anything about how much the equipment was.
I included a information item back 2 committee meetings ago, which included the price alternatives for that. I can resubmit that in info items if you want to take a look at it, or I can bring it to the next committee meeting and discuss it at that point.
Would you just bring it to, we'll discuss it.
Absolutely.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
I'd like to have a report on the tree trimming. How's that going for over the winter? For, I don't know where he's starting
Could
or,
he put in an agenda package?
that's fine.
Absolutely. I'll put a info item in as far as what warps we've completed street by street.
Thank you.
Okay. One other question that, no, I don't have any more. I'm sorry. Any other items? You gonna bring up update on beet juice? How that worked? In committee or next week? Okay,
Correct. Next week, council meeting, I'll have an update on our anti-icing program.
okay. Nothing else? Make a motion to adjourn?
Before we go, don't you have to read about the minutes, about the amount of funds? Okay.
So there was a motion, second, all in favor? Aye, motion carries, thank you. Opposed? One opposed, make the minute, note that one opposed.